So, good morning, unicorns. Thanks for joining us today on today's Faith Talks. I'm super excited. I say that every single time, but every single time gets me excited because it's a different story and it's a different journey in faith. So if you're joining this Faith Talks for the first time, or if you're new to the group and you haven't heard it before, I'll just let you know kind of what the inspiration and where this series of interviews came from and what the intent and purpose is behind it. So it was really rad because a couple months ago, back in December, Spirit in Meditation gave me a really awesome interview series on spiritual gifts. And so I did a really cool series hearing about spiritual gifts from all kinds of different people, different healing modalities, and just how spiritual gifts empower them to change lives. And then just a couple weeks ago, I had same thing. Spirit said, do this. And so this was the next series of interviews. And so I put it out and instantly I had 12 more people, which is really cool because I didn't even say I wanted 12 people. I was just like, whoever wants to, I don't even care. And now it's up to 12 people, which is so rad. So maybe 12 is a good number. 12 more people sharing their stories in faith. And for me, it was, God told me it's faith talks, right? So I wanted to do interviews with people on their journey in faith, wherever their spiritual journey is, their life journey, anything that, circumstances, things that they've overcome and dealt with, where faith has played a role in it or come to play a role in it, even when they didn't expect it. And then it really evolved into faith talks. It was like a double entendre, the word, like faith talks. We're talking about faith, that these are talks on faith, but then it's people speaking in faith, right? Like faith talks. When faith itself talks, how powerful it is and how life-changing it can be for people when we actually talk about these things out loud and share these stories. Because for me, it's all about sharing our stories is what continues our healing journey. And it paves a way and a pathway for others to begin to either continue their healing journey or start their healing journey. And I think that as long as we continue to share our stories out loud, as hard as they may be or uncomfortable as they were given to us for a reason. And they truly are a gift, as hard as sometimes they are, because now we are able to help others overcome, change their life in a big way so that they feel the light and they know that they are the light. And that no matter how hard these things are to overcome, they've overcome them in faith for a reason. So I'm so excited for Amiee today because I actually met Amiee through another group a few months back. She was teaching for the week. She was the week's guest teacher and teaching about juicing and just natural holistic health. And that really hits home for me because I think that's a huge piece in our spiritual journey and being really aligned. So I loved her whole week. Like I was just every single one. I was watching all of it because I'm like, teach me all of the things that I don't know about, like how much more healthy my body can be. So that was awesome. So I heard a bit of her story, but just a bit, because most of it was she was teaching on what she teaches now, which is juicing and just natural holistic health. So I only heard a piece of it. So I'm super excited. Please welcome Amiee. Give her, hearts, thumbs up. Her story on transforming shame. I think, Amiee, that's like I follow Brene Brown. And so I listened to a lot. I don't know if you have, but her whole series on dispelling shame and really overcoming shame and in our stories and our hurts and our wounds. I think that's what holds people back the most from healing, because the shame just shrouds everything and it's really hard to get out of that shame. And so I think your story is so powerful in how we can overcome shame, what tools and things that you use that can be applied to life to help people start moving out of the shame story and into the faith story and the transformation that can come from that. Because I mean, really getting rid of the shame, which is, I think is it holds us back, but it's almost like a false, like it's a lie. You know what I mean? It's like a big, big lie that we keep telling ourselves. So anyways, thank you for being willing to share the story with us. I love you so much, and you're such a light, and I'm just so grateful that you're here. So tell us your story. Tell us all about how you overcame your shame and your transformation and how we can help others.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Monique, for having me on. And hello, unicorns. So happy to be here with all of you guys. And just what an honor to be able to sit here and share my story with you. And I like how you just kind of ended and said, like, how we allow our shame to hold us back by the stories that we tell ourselves. And that was a huge, huge story that I told myself for a long time, and I'll get to that. So where my shame story starts is actually, I was very young. I was, there's two different events that I can remember in my life right around the age of 3. And one of them is that I had a very amazing spiritual gift of being able to connect with God and the angels.
Wow.
And I had a great-grandmother who was suffering from cancer, and she lived with my grandma, was my grandma's mother, my mama. And I can remember driving over to my grandma's house, and we were going to visit. My parents would be like, now, Amy, you can't go bother Mama because she's resting and she needs her rest. And we would get to the house, and I would go in, and I would say, okay. And I knew after a while the adults wouldn't be paying attention to me anymore. So I would go and play, and in my head, I knew that once their attention was diverted, I was going to go sneak down the hallway into Mama's room, and I was going to crawl into her bed. She had this really beautiful antique nightlight with these little flowers on it, and I loved it. Had like one of those dial on and offs.
Yeah.
And I would love to play with that. And so I would play with it, and I would turn it on, and Mama's eyes would open, and she would get this big smile on her face, and I would crawl up into the bed, and I would talk to her about that. Back then, the word I used was God, and I would tell her how she had nothing to worry about because God was going to take care of her, and that she had nothing to fear, and that soon her pain was going to be going away. And I could feel the room. I could feel all the angels and all the energy and all the information being shared to me that I was giving to her. And we would lay there for what seemed like hours. How long was it in a 3-year-old's mind? I don't know, but it seemed like hours to me. And we would just lay and talk, and I would just tell her all these Bible stories that I had learned at church, and just keep reassuring her over and over and over that she had nothing to fear. And I felt that strength inside of me, and I knew it to be so true.
Wow.
But right around the same time in my life, I started to get sexually abused. And that abuse didn't happen just one time. It happened many times for many years throughout my life. And that gift I hid inside of me. And I got told to never tell about this abuse. And it was someone that I trusted. I was 3. I didn't know any better. It was someone that I trusted, so I never told. I didn't tell a single person until I was maybe in my late teens or early 20s. So I held this inside of me for a long time. And I went to school. Of course, we all go to school, right? And I would go to school, and I wouldn't be able to talk. The teachers would, want us to say our lessons or describe something or read, and I couldn't talk. And it took me a long time to get comfortable around people. And because of that, they thought that I was actually like a special needs child. So I got sent to the special needs classroom several times for several years, and I would go there, but I would light up because there was only like maybe 5 or 6 kids, and they needed extra help.
Yeah.
And I loved it because I felt like a helper and a teacher, and I would go around and I would read them stories, and I would help them tie their shoes, and we would go out on the playground together, and some of them would love to swing, but they didn't know how. So I remember I would push them on the swing, and I would be in that classroom for, I don't know, it seemed like a long time when you're young, right? But maybe just a week or 2. And the special needs teacher would say, Amy doesn't belong here. And they would put me back in the regular classroom, and I just was kind of shoved to the back of the room and kind of forgotten. And nobody worked with me. So I wasn't ever told that I was stupid or dumb, but I got this message that I wasn't smart. That's the messaging I kind of picked up on and told myself. And so I don't know. I started telling myself all these stories. I started telling myself I was stupid and I was ugly and I was fat. And even though I had friends throughout school, I felt like an outsider. I felt like I didn't belong. I didn't feel like I connected to anybody. I compared my body to everybody's I saw. I compared my face to every person's I saw. It wasn't until my senior year in high school, a schoolmate of mine said, "What's your class rank?" So remember, I've told myself now for years how stupid I am. She's like, "What's your class rank?" And I'm like, "What's a class rank?" She's like, "Oh, well, where do you rank? And, like, what number are you in our class? Like, how well did you do in school?" And I'm like, I don't know. I don't think I did all that well. And I said, "How can you tell?" And she said, "Well, you just go to the guidance counselor and they'll be able to look it up for you." And I really wanted to know because it intrigued me, but I was so shy. Like, it really took a lot of guts. Like, I remember I went home and I thought about this for like 3 days. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go in there and I'm just going to ask. And I remember going in there and I had sweaty palms and, it was just like the worst feeling in the world. And
well, I would guess also, and just to interrupt you, you don't want to really know the answer. Like, you want to know, but you don't want to know, right?
Right. I was just so curious, and it ended up being like I was 13th in my class of 186, and I still didn't really understand what that meant because I still thought I was really stupid and really fat and really ugly, and somebody explained it to me like, "You're 13th in the class, like that's really, really good." And I was like, oh, and even though I had gotten mostly A's and B's all throughout, grade school and middle school and high school, I still lived with this story. So I went away to college. I went away to college in, it was about 3 hours away from home. I wanted to go away far enough that I had a little bit of freedom. And my parents couldn't check up on me, but I wanted to be close enough that if I wanted to go home, I could. And it was there in college that I was introduced to alcohol and drugs. And I started using alcohol and drugs full time. I was still able to go to school full time and maintain really good grades. I had a job that I worked full time. So I was a full-time student. I worked full time and I partied full time. And I was able to maintain that. I held positions on campus organizations. Like, I was a vice president of what was called the UPB University Program Board. I was able to I had this like crazy schedule, and I'm a very driven person. Even with all of that, like, I still was a very driven person. But I was masking all that pain, and back then I didn't realize that's what I was doing. I just told myself I was a functional alcoholic. I could handle it. I could pay my bills. I could still maintain my lifestyle. And that went on for many, many years, but that caught up with me in my mid to late 20s. I started to become, in my mid 20s, I started to become incredibly suicidal. And I started to attempt suicide pretty often, and I was going in and out of psych wards all the time. And my parents started to get worried because I still was living in the town 3 hours away from home. And one day my roommate was very, very worried about me and called my parents, and my parents came and picked me up in the middle of the night and brought me home. And I went to a psychiatric ward here. I ended up going to like a 90-day rehabilitation program 2 or 3 different times that I can remember. and I started to get DUIs.
Wow.
And it wasn't until my third DUI that everything kind of started to like make sense to me. Like, my life is out of control, even though I had friends who really cared about me and family who really cared about me, and they would sit me down and they'd say, I'm worried about you. Something needs to change. It wouldn't click in me. I wasn't ready to hear it yet. And I was driving my car drunk and high on drugs one day. And I was also by this point suffering from binge eating disorder. And I was driving and I hit a telephone pole. Thank God I hit a telephone pole, and not a person. I still deal with that a little bit. I've healed a lot of that wound. But thank God I didn't hurt a person. Thank God I hurt a telephone pole in my own self. And the police came, and I was in the back of the police car. They, of course, had me handcuffed. I had the handcuffs behind my back. And I got in the police car, and it was the middle of summer, and it was probably 90 some degrees and really humid here at that time. And I remember the policeman didn't have air conditioning in his car, so the window was rolled down in the back as far as it would go. There was only like a little crack. And I took the handcuffs and I kind of jimmied them down under my legs and pulled them forward because I didn't want to go to jail. And I shimmied myself out of the window. We were probably going about 30 miles an hour. And no, I'm not kidding. And I catapulted myself out of the police car trying to kill myself.
Oh my gosh, Amiee.
And I can remember rolling in the street, and the policeman stopped the car. I was like, what are you doing? What are you doing? I'm like, I want to die. I'm not going to jail. I'm not going to jail. I want to die. If you take me and put me in a jail cell, I'm going to continue to run across the jail cell and ram my head into the wall until I bleed and kill myself. That's what I kept telling him over and over and over. I was gone.
Yeah.
I was gone. And so I was taken again to the psych ward. And I tried that route so hard. That was like my point of saying, okay, something is wrong and something needs to change. And I tried with my whole heart. I tried with my whole heart prescription medication, and I tried AA, and I tried NA, and I tried all the different programs that we are taught work for people if you work it. And I worked it, and I tried to work it, and I got sponsors, and I worked the steps, and I hung with the good crowd and only the women and everything they told me, and it still didn't work for me. I thought something was wrong with me. I didn't know. I didn't know what was wrong with me. I thought there was something wrong with me. And I started, after a certain amount of time, I started to use drugs and alcohol again. And I didn't go to jail this time, but I was using some really, really hardcore, nasty drugs and hanging around with a really not so great crowd at all. And I knew in my own self, like, this has to change. And I was so scared. Like, by this point, I had no family members who wanted anything to do with me. I had no car. I had no money. There were so many things. I literally had nothing. I was rock bottom, beneath rock bottom. And I told I was able to come into my parents' home. I was able to tell my mom what I had been doing. I went to a rehabilitation center again. I got clean from what I had been using, and I had lost my job in the process of this. And my parents said I could come back into their home with the condition that I got a job. And I was going to do that. So I had to find something within walking distance of their home. And about 3 blocks away was a health food store. And I went in there, and I really know I was led there by my grandmother's spirit. It just called to me, and I just felt like that's where I was going to go. I had a friend who worked there, and she talked me up to the manager, and I went there, I applied, I got a job. They really didn't need somebody a whole lot of hours at first, but I am a very driven, very hardworking person, and I proved myself very quickly, and they gave me more hours faster than they thought I was going to. And it was there that my life changed forever. It changed forever. Those wonderful women and a few men taught me all about eating properly and herbs and natural medicine. And then I took it a step further. Like I absorbed it all so fast. I've always been this really fast learner, and I've been able to take in large amounts of information that most people have a hard time grasping, and it just comes really easy to me. So I just started taking it all in, and I took it a step further, and I started studying the human body nonstop because I wanted to understand.
Yeah.
So I studied biology and chemistry and physiology and anatomy and nutritional deficiencies and herbs and water and you name it. I studied it all so that I had this really clear picture of how the human body worked and how all the little intertwinings of the inner parts of the body worked so that people function properly. And it was in this studying that I found my personal belief and my own findings that there are 5 things that most doctors don't address with most people's health. And if they just did, many lifestyle diseases would transform and reverse. And so I started treating myself that way. And this was about 13 years ago. I had a couple of different periods where I fell off track and used alcohol for very brief periods of time, because at that point in time, I didn't understand that there was an emotional and a mental component to it too. So I was always my own guinea pig, and I was always kind of fine-tuning my work. And as I started to work on those mental and emotional, spiritual, and energetic components as well, I found that I became alive and awakened, and I was able to help other people on an even more profound and transformational level. And as I became more enlightened and awakened to this, and as I'm able to work with each person that I'm working with, I become more and more and more in tune with the spiritual gift that I lost when I was 3 years old.
Amazing.
And it's honestly been a very quick journey for me, because I never told. There were 2 people who knew my story where I worked, even though I had worked there for 13 years. At this point, it was 12 years. Only 2 people knew my story. And it's only in the past 13 months that I found my voice. I was 40 years old before I was able to come and say this story that I'm telling you to other people. And I've said it enough now that it comes out easily, but I can tell you the first time I said it, it was a room full of, I think, 12 people. And for an hour straight, all of us did was cry. But it's just been such an amazing 13 months, and I've come so far, and I know my vision, and I know what I see, and I know where I want to go, and I know how I want to help people. And so I just keep pushing myself to my limits and walking past my fear so that I can share my story with other people who may have gone through a similar experience, maybe not exact, but in their own way relate to this and overcome what I found to be my core wound. Because I talk a lot about, when I'm working with people, I call it, I say medicine a lot, but I mean like internal, like spiritual medicine. Like my core wound, I had symptoms, right? My symptom was alcoholism and drug addiction and binge eating disorder and acne and digestive disorder and all these things. But the core wound was shame.
Right. Right.
And I had to be able to dig down deep enough to find my core wound so that I could heal on every level. And that's how I work with my clients. I kind of call myself a shadow hunter. You know, I'm able to really easily see into people's souls and see where their hurt or the word I use is darkness is. But I don't go there with them first because I know there will be resistance. So it's like peeling the layers of the onion to get them to that place.
I love, love, love. I resonate with all of that so much. I feel like I'm on like a very parallel path for you. I wrote down all these notes, and I just want to, before I start asking questions and all that, let everybody know. So Melissa, thanks for popping on. Jeanette, thank you I'm so glad this is a good time and that you're here live. Thanks for being on. And then Jenny Shaw's on from Texas. Thanks for being here, you guys. Melissa said your story helps heal others. I agree. Like I said, I think that sharing our story is a huge continuously healing for ourselves. And then we are healing others in sharing these stories. But it's interesting for me because I had my own spiritual awakening and all of this, because I also grew up in faith, like in Christian faith, going to church. Jesus literally is one of my spirit guides. He's my best friend. We're tight like this. And it's been like that since I was 5 years old. Like I always knew that since I was very, very young. Hold on a second. Sorry. I'm going to cough. And I don't want you guys to hear it. Oh, yay. Okay, I'm back. I want to cough on you guys. But I just turned 40 in January. And I also, in the last like 6 months, went through a huge, in my own spiritual awakening, got much deeper, much closer with God. And it also had to do with me digging into, I knew what my core wound was, and it was also surrounded by sexual assault. I don't want to call it sexual abuse because I don't know if you heard my story. I shared it in this group, but it was, I don't know how to describe it. That's a weird thing that I come with because it wasn't, it was like contact, but nothing further than that, right? But it still affected me deeply. And that happened when I was like 8 years old, and it changed the course of my entire life. And same thing, made me go on all these crazy paths where I was right here with Jesus and God and felt really good in myself and in my relationship there. It changed everything. And I didn't reveal that until I was to family members or anything until I was in my teens. And then didn't share it publicly until this group a few months ago, so I feel like 40 is like, because I know quite a few other people who also came into their spiritual awakening at 40. And it just reminds me of like Jesus going in the desert for 40 days. And, like 40 is like kind of a really profound number when you like relate it spiritually, I think. But that like struck me because it's kind of like the same path, but for me, I feel the exact same way. And you mentioned that I really want to also get that knowledge and that word out to people that not all of there's so many healing modalities for everything that ails us. I mean, like from physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, there are many different healing modalities. And you touched on this a lot because in my household, like my husband, is in a recovery program. He's been sober for, I don't know, like 18 years or something, really long time. And he loves Alcoholics Anonymous. He supports it. It worked for him and worked really well. And now he's able to support others through it. But that doesn't mean that it works for everybody. And it's the same thing with other things like physically, if there's like a doctor that you don't resonate with, you go and get a second opinion and you try a different doctor, or, you start trying essential oils if you don't want to take medication. There's just so many different modalities everywhere. And so I love that you recognize and honor that you tried it and you tried it to the fullest, but it didn't work. So you try something else. Is that something that you also like, encourage people to, try other things, see if this works or doesn't work, or, how do you recommend that? Because I'm sure your clients come to you and say, I've tried all these things and I'm still feeling this way, right?
Absolutely. Usually when people come to me, it's because they've tried everything else out there first. And like I sometimes am their last resort. But I personally believe that every single human being is their own unique power and being, and that my way is not the only way. It's my way. And so I am very big at explaining. I I live in the highest of integrity at all times. So when I'm explaining things to people, I will give them many different avenues to explore, and then I will help them decide. Because sometimes, like, I might give them, like, here are these 5 things that I know of.
Yeah.
And that can be a little overwhelming, right? Like, oh, wow, there's 5 things I can try. So then we connect to body wisdom.
Yeah.
And I help them kind of connect to body wisdom and come at it from their heart space instead of their mind space, to see what feels right to them in their heart first. And we try that route. And if that route doesn't work, then we go to plan B, C, D, whatever. So yeah, like I'm very big, like my way was what worked for me. And I believe we are not a cookie cutter society, and that I have a very unique way of asking the right questions of people to have come from them which direction their soul wants them to go, literally. Right. So then that way I can guide them in the direction that their specific guidance system is telling me they need to go.
Exactly. And I think a lot of people get stuck in doing what society says, right? Like, go to the doctor, do these programs, do these things, and that's it. Like, the world in general doesn't give a lot of these other, just like you were saying, like all of these other things, like the 5 things that you found that doctors don't talk about or tell about. Like, how are people supposed to keep healing if they're just following what the societal norm is of what you're supposed to do to, like, get yourself better or get well? Which like I said, I don't discount what doctors or medication, how it can help people at all, because again, that might be someone's path. But if you're doing something continuously and you're still not healing and you're still not feeling change at all, like, it's time to, like, start exploring other things, and I think that applies to every aspect of ourselves. Like, it's mind, body, spirit. So it's not, if your body's feeling good but something still is feeling off, I like to call it, and I'm actually teaching on this week, but it's like a checks and balance. You have to, like, see what part of where you're falling short in your mind, body, spirit connection, and then find which modality will help you heal that to get back aligned and on track, right? With where your soul is supposed to be going. It's just so interesting. I love that you teach that and that you help people realize that, because that's exactly how I feel we need to be healing. And that's in the healing is where we can release the shame, right? Like, that's where it's easier to talk about these things, because the healing comes, if we're not dealing with it or not seeing change come from it, it's just going to keep staying in a shame. The shame will still be there as the wall, and we won't overcome it. I just want to make sure we don't have any, thank you. Jenny saying she loves us. Thank you. You guys, I want to let you know too, that Amiee is a total open book. So if you have questions that you want to ask about anything, like, anything at all, like, please comment. If you're not comfortable commenting or asking in the forum, then you can just message her directly. Like I said, she's super, super open. Her mission in this is just to help everyone heal, also release the shame and start transforming your life. So don't feel like you can't ask anything. But I wanted to go back, and I actually had a question. At what point, because so now in your story, right, you had the shame from the abuse from when you were little that you were masking and hiding forever. And then I'm assuming that you also then in all of the other things, like the drugs, the alcohol, that stuff that started happening because of that, then you had shame surrounding that, right? Like, it's like 2 completely different shame stories, but it's like shame on shame on shame.
Yes. Yes.
So how did you work to, like, start unraveling that? Like, was it all together, or was it, like, individually? Because we can all have that. Like, I have multiple shame stories that I had to heal. That wasn't just surrounding, my sexual assault. There were other, obviously, same thing, like, results that I came from actions that I took because of that initial shame story, then became other shame on top of that. So how, if it happened to you and it happened to me, we can't be the only two people on earth that that's happening to, right? So how does the one start unraveling their shame story?
So
and transforming it.
I had to start with what was easiest for me first, and that was being an alcoholic and a drug addict. That was the easier story for me. So what did I do to kind of transform that? One of the biggest things was I just started talking about it, because every time I told my story, it healed me. But then I had other people come to me, like who couldn't necessarily like say it through Facebook, but I'll get private messages very frequently and be like, "Thank you, for sharing your story. Yeah. Thank you. You make me cry, but cry in a healing way." So that was one of the first things I did, and it was the scariest thing. I got told that as I was starting to become a health coach, I got told that my story was my most powerful tool. And I was like, whoa, do I have a story, right? You know, I had been holding the story in, and I had lived in shame with it forever. I didn't want anyone to know about that at all. Like, I thought that they would see me differently. I thought that they would.
Yeah. Like that might become your identity, right? I think people the shame holds them back from talking about it because they're afraid that they'll be identified as that, right? Like that will become what people see of them instead of the transformation.
Exactly. And that's what I was afraid of. But I just said, you know what? If this will help people, I'll do it. Because I do have this very passionate fire inside of me underneath all of that lock and key I had kept myself under. I had this like very intense fire energy inside of me. So I just said, I'm going to do this. And I lived through the vulnerability of it. Yeah. And it was terrifying and exhilarating and freeing and so scary. You know, it was like this, like I would go through these like realms of like, my subconscious mind was literally taking me on the gamut of like super scared to like free beyond measure. And as I started to tell it more and more and more, it just became easier and easier and easier. And as I told it more and more and more, and it became more comfortable for me, then I found that most people started making a connection with me, and they started saying, "Thank you so much for sharing your story. Like it heals me." Whenever many people come to me and say, "The first time I heard your story, I cried, but it was a good cry." And so that has helped. Having a really strong morning routine has really been beneficial for me. I start my day with reading, gratitude, meditation, journaling, and exercise. Those are my non-negotiables every morning. I find that whenever I practice that, and I know some people might find that really strict or whatever, but for me, that's what I need to stay disciplined and stay in my own lane, so to speak, so that I have control over my day and my day doesn't have control over me. So those are some tools that I use with people. I also use meditation and visualization and mental rehearsals. I also am a Reiki master, so I also help people balance chakras. I am skilled at, for lack of a better, I'm skilled at analyzing and seeing where the imbalance in the chakras lie, not just from the words people are telling me, but actually just looking at them. I can tell by their skin and their eyes and their hair and how they hold themselves, the words they're speaking, the vocal inflection, the body language, all of it just, it loads. It's like a puzzle in my mind, like they're giving me all the pieces, and it's like I can masterfully put the puzzle pieces together and understand, like, okay, here's where they are and here's where they want to go. So I see their point A, I see their point B, and if they choose to work with me, I develop their unique path to get them from point A to point B with the least, by stretching them as much as they'll let me, without putting their brain and their subconscious mind into crazy overload. But
or where they start resisting, right? Like, I think that's what for me is like, we want to move forward and not take the step backwards. We want to keep moving forward.
Exactly.
That is such a beautiful, beautiful gift. I had my very first Reiki session in January for my birthday. Because like I said, I'm on the healing warpath. So I'm going to heal the hell out of myself.
Yes.
Throw all of that stuff to everybody. Like, these are all the things that I've tried and used and that have worked or haven't or whatever to, really open that healing doorway. I just want to heal all the people because like you said, there is nothing more freeing than healing and releasing all that baggage that has held us back, because that's not who we were created to be. That's not how we were called to live, right? In this shame and the darkness and the sadness and all of those negative things. Like, that's not who God or spirit, whatever you call your higher power, whatever name is comfortable for you, that's not how we were created to be and called to live. So it's so important that we, continue to use these all the healing, any healing modalities, try them, use them, see what works for you, see what doesn't, connect with coaches and people that can help you, because that's how we will continue to change the world. As it makes me kind of bummed out, I think, when everyone's like, the state of the world and all of the darkness that's happening and all of that. But if we live in that, again, that's another like almost shame story that we're living in. If we continue to just heal ourselves, that's how we continue to change the world into a lightness. And I feel the shift happening because I think more and more people are stepping out of the shame stories, stepping out of the darkness and really seeking more and wanting to live better and in higher vibration. And as we do that, I was just having this conversation with someone else. It bleeds into our own like circle of like our immediate life, right? Because we're changing and healing and growing and evolving. And so that's happening locally, just in our own little sphere of life. And then as that changes and shifts, that our little sphere of life will continue to like evolve and brighten and lighten and feel better. And that's how we'll change it. And I think that's why I love your story, and I love that you share it, because it is a dark story. It is hard times. It was something super hard to overcome, but you made a choice to step out in faith and say, hey, something's got to give, right? It's either nothing and I die, or it's something else, because this middle ground of living like this it's not good, right? It's not doing anything for you or anybody else. So what's the point? And I think so many people live in that and don't speak about it. And so your story is so incredibly powerful and healing. And I'm so grateful that you are willing to share it and to change lives by sharing your story. I mean, your gifts and what you do on a business level, like coaching level and guide level, is incredible. But just the fact that you share your story willingly and openly and in such a short amount of time, I mean, you've impacted amazing amounts of lives just sharing your story. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to share it here with you and your beautiful group.
Oh my gosh. So Rebecca, I don't know what she was saying. Thanks for joining. Rebecca Packard is on. I think you guys might know each other too, but we're all in a lot of same groups, but she said she's typing the same words as we say it. I don't know what it was, but that's good. We're all being on the same same wavelength. How long is your morning routine? Like those 4 things that are non-negotiables for you?
About 3 hours.
Is that total, like do you take breaks in between all that, or do you do it from start to finish?
I pretty much do it from start to finish, because the one thing that I might have a little break between, like I wake up and I don't allow myself to just lie there, because if I did, I know I'd be lying there for, yeah, I'm one that I'd probably lie there till I had to go. So I had to learn to, when I wake up, I get up and I have a book nearby.
Okay.
And I just start reading. I'm really big on just the mind is our garden, right? So we want to continue to water the garden. So I read for about 30 to 45 minutes every morning, and then I meditate for 20 to 40 minutes. And then whatever I get through meditation, I journal. And then I go straight to writing my gratitudes.
Okay.
And then maybe, I'm getting ready because I don't exercise at home. I find it better if I go to a gym, or I take some strength training classes. So I get ready and I do what I need to do, but it's no more than like 30 minutes between the first part of my morning routine to going to exercise.
Okay.
And once I do my exercise, then all the serotonin, right, is released in my brain, and my natural antidepressant for me has kicked in, and I am just like raring and ready to go for the day.
I love that. That's such a great routine. I think, and just like you said, I don't want anyone to feel like they have to spend 3 hours in the morning doing all that. Like, for me, like I have kids and I wish I could spend 3 hours and 45 minutes meditate. Like I love that. And I can sometimes, but it doesn't always work out that way. So it is like, make sure that it's unique to you. But I think what a great point that you said is just be disciplined in whatever it is that you choose, right? Like choose something. And I think also just start with one thing. You don't necessarily have to have this like, amazing, I think it will develop into whatever, all of the things, but I think the gratitude is super important. For me, one of my first things that I do is I like to lay there for a minute. So I can't just like pop up right away, or else I won't feel good at all. Like I need to wake up, but I lay there and I meditate, and I really just give my day to God and say, I'm releasing control of this day. Show me where to go, show me what to say, all of those, like, just you show me what to do. And that's every single day. Like that's my non-negotiable. I have to give my day to God, because if I don't, I know I'll control it. Right. So no matter what, I think it's just a matter of finding what works for you, but staying consistent in it, because that's when you start seeing the fruit of everything that starts coming because of that consistency. The gratitude changes your whole, I think that in general changes that's one thing that I tell my client immediately. I tell my clients, if they're like having a bad day, get into gratitude right now. Like start writing a page full of like, be whatever you're grateful for, like instantly change that, because there's no room for anything else. Like you're putting yourself back in a love vibration. When you choose the gratitude, you're connecting to God again, when your spirit, when you're in meditation. And you can meditate or even do breathing exercises. Like that's something that I incorporate like in my morning. It's like I said, there's so many different things that people can do, but find something that works for you and just be consistent in it, so that it becomes part of your norm. Like this is now your norm for your day, right? Like that's it. Have non-negotiables, because if you want to continue on a growth path and be aligned and in course where spirit is guiding you to, it's so important to do those things, I think, every day. And I think when you don't do them, I don't know if this is for you, but if I don't, like again, back to the checks and balances, I can easily go back and pinpoint, like, why am I feeling like this? Why am I being short with my kids today? Oh, I didn't meditate. You know what I mean? Like I skipped out on something. Like I can totally easily go back to, what haven't I done in my checks and balances, and why am I feeling this way? So it's almost like in releasing all of that stuff and coming into who you were called to be, it's easier you step out of that shame story and into who we're called to be and what we're meant to do. it's like you step back from the life. Like, I don't know, I see it in third person sometimes, right? Like I can really step back and be like, that's the shame story and I'm not going there. This is what is supposed to be. It's not even a new story. This is just what it's supposed to be. That's where I want to keep going. And so I need to do these things to continue to get myself there. So yeah, do you guys have any questions? If you do, just comment. Yes, Melissa's agreeing. She's saying gratitude, gratitude, gratitude for sure.
Yeah.
Yes. Rebecca's saying, oh yeah. Eat the elephant one bite at a time. Exactly. With like a morning routine and all that stuff. Yeah. Let's see. I don't know if I have any other questions. If you guys do, have questions or anything, any thoughts, just drop them in the comments. If you're watching the replay, thank you for, popping on with us. Thank you for sticking with us this hour. If you've been here live with us, but like I said, Amie's an open book. So am I. You're more than welcome to drop comments or questions or anything, if you need guidance in anything, if you want to connect with her on a one-on-one level, just comment below and we'll get back in after this and definitely get back to you guys and answer any questions. But I did want to ask you, I've asked all my guests if they have a favorite like quote or mantra or affirmation or anything that's really helped you in your journey that could be of service possibly to anyone else if they need, some sort of a little something to hold on to. What's yours?
Absolutely. It is be the change you want to see in the world.
Yeah.
By Gandhi.
I love that one. I just got chills. So good. So true. Well, thank you guys for joining us. Amiee, thank you for sharing your story. Like I said, you're a huge, huge, huge light in my life, in my world. I'm grateful that you're here and sharing your story. Thank you for continuing to change lives and for choosing to love yourself enough that you can love others through their change and transformation. So grateful for you. Thank you guys for spending the hour with us. Thank you for being here. We will see you tomorrow on another Faith Talks. I think my last one's Wednesday, which I'm kind of bummed about, but this has been awesome. Thank you guys. Love you. See you soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.